Hello, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Red, White, and Brown, brought to you by Daisies Live. And today, it's the OG crew. It's Michael and Mira here. And today, we're talking about three movies and TV shows that have come out this prior week. By the way, apologies for my voice. I've been screaming my heart out at some basketball games recently. Big sports fan over here. So if you hear the voice crack a little bit, I promise I'm not going through puberty. Already done. I'm just a little hoarse right now. But speaking of hoarse,
Yeah,
in our
Dasha is hoarse, sir. She's
yeah,
out and she's sick. She has fever. It's the time of the year when she's hitting back uni, and she ended up getting fever on flight, but she promised that she'll be back next week. So we wish her all the best for her
I swear it
recovery.
seems every time the winter comes around, that's just when disease comes around because every winter is usually whenever I start to get some sort of respiratory thing or some little virus here and there. I mean, all across campuses too. Kids are sick. So thank God
Yeah.
I'm still healthy. Promise I'm not sick, just a little bit of a voice hoarse. But we're gonna kick this right off with the first review here. Like I said, got a big list right here, so stay tuned for all the great hits. I'm going to leave it off for Mira to get us started off. Mira, what were you watching this week? How was it? Was this a good week for Bollywood cinema?
It was a great week. I ended up watching quite a few shows. I actually have to tell you, ended up finishing off the show that I really liked on Wiki called The Forbidden Marriage. It's the story of the Joseon era and this king, his love of his life, his wife, the queen, dies. And he decides that nobody in the kingdom is going to get married, and that entire marriage edict goes on for 7 years. The 7 years, nobody's allowed to marry or have a relationship, and everybody's
Oh
pissed
wow.
with him till this woman comes along, and she's a swindler, and she tells him, your ex-wife's spirit is inside me, and she's trying to tell you to move on. So it was really funny and fun,
Yeah.
and it was a really lovely 12 episode thing, so I actually loved it. And the other one I really liked was My Little Man, and that's a C drama. It was really interesting. So this woman studies at a university in Italy, and one day she gets kidnapped because the kidnappers think she is another person who looks exactly like her. And then the
Hmm.
second woman just realizes that somebody else has been kidnapped in her place. She goes to rescue the girl and in the whole process dies. And how this art student has to literally take over the life of the dead woman because she has to save the woman's empire. So really nice story. It was breezy. It was a lot of, action and, a lot of
Yeah, it
surprises.
sounds like a
I
couple
like that.
breezy little TV shows you can enjoy over the weekend.
Absolutely. And we have a show called Drama where Jessica reviews C dramas and J dramas and K dramas, and you love that show because Jessica's so good at it. But here we do the Daisy stuff and things that have a Daisy flavor. So let's get started with this movie called Mission Majnu that is streaming on Netflix. And of course I had to watch it because my favorite actor, hottie Siddharth Malhotra, was in the show.
This is
But
an OG hot list member.
totally, he's a perennial hot list, and just he's so charming. He's very charming.
Of course.
So there are the movie had this two stars. There is Siddharth Malhotra and there's Rashmika Mandanna who's also a star, and then there were actors like Sharif Hashmi and Kumud Mishra and Rajit Kapoor who are seasoned actors. So so that we differentiate between the two. So this movie is set up in there's a narration to the movie where um, the guy says that he's a chief of the research and analysis wing of the of India, which is the Indian version of the CIA. And then he explains the backstory of the nuclear arms race between India and Pakistan, which happened after the 1971 Indo-Pakistani War. India won the war, but the tension remained. It remains still now, and the two countries don't even allow their actors to mingle. Literally, the Pakistani actors can't even act in Indian movies anymore. They used to at some point in time, and we saw some really good content come out of there. But then coming back to the story, so this is set up in around 1974, where India has successfully conducted a nuclear bombs test. And Pakistan secretly starts developing their own atom bomb technology. They bring in a scientist who's an American Pakistani. They bring him in and they ask him to develop their technology. So we are introduced to Tariq, played by Siddharth Malhotra, and he's a guy who lives in Rawalpindi, who's uneducated, and he works as a sub tailor in a tailoring shop. And he falls in love. And this is where I don't understand Indian movies. They have to show that fall in love romantic angle where you could have just stuck to his spy life and that would have been so much more interesting, right? So this guy falls in love with the tailor's niece, Nasreen, who's blind, but somehow she six senses how handsome he is and falls in love with him too. And so Fatari gets love at first sight, and then there's this entire sequence of maybe 20 to 20 minutes, which weren't needed in the movie. The 20 minutes of everything in slow-mo and flowers falling and them dancing and singing and, that entire romantic thing. And once we're done with the romantic thing, we see that Tariq and Nasreen get married and they live very modest life because obviously he earns the salary of a sub-tailor. However, guess what? It's a perfect cover for an Indian raw agent. He's a spy.
Yeah.
But of course, his wife doesn't know it, and now she's pregnant. And he's really, his real name is Amandeep Singh, so he's a Sikh, and he's really deep into it by now because he's a spy who's married a woman, and he hasn't told her who he is, and now she's pregnant with his baby. Anyways, now this guy's tasked along with two other spies who are also undercover, and one of them being the Molvi of the mosque. He's a spy as well. He's undercover, and all these guys are tasked with the entire process of really figuring out if Pakistan is indeed developing an atom bomb, and if it is, where is it? And they need to even get the physical evidence. So this is where the entire drama kind of takes off, and then he tries his best. Tariq tries his best to figure out where it could be, but he takes a very unconventional approach to. He's not James Bond. He has a very unconventional approach to figuring out. Like, for example, he visits the probable neighborhood. He also figures out where in Rawalpindi who has gotten, in English toilets done, because that would tell you that somebody's come from abroad and they've furnished their home with facilities that are available abroad and they are expensive. So he tries to figure that out, and then he goes to the neighborhood, he goes to the kids' schools to figure out who the girls were. So he kind of traces it back in a way where, they figure out that whatever the Indian government thinks and the Israeli Mossad thinks where this bomb is being made is not where it's made. So they have like 48 hours to figure out how to get some physical evidence so that Israel stops attacking the wrong place. They turn around and don't attack the wrong place. So they go and they visit this place, and they're not able to take pictures to make it feasible. They get caught over there, and then he figures out a very ingenious plan. He actually figures out there's only one barber in town, and all the people at the bomb site are literally going to the barber shop for the haircuts. He actually collects the hair and he sends it over to India in train in somebody's luggage. And that was smart of him, because if they lab test the hair, they'll realize what the exposure, what the uranium exposure of that person to the hair is. So that is a physical evidence that India takes to Mossad, and they stop the war. But they also figure out where the bomb is being made and how it's being made, and they kind of are able to push back Pakistan's joining the nuclear race by a few years at least. So this is the crux of the story. Now, what did I feel about the story? Well, I'll tell you something. It would have been a great story had they not appended it with a lot of jingoism in the end. And I'm not saying it's bad to be nationalist. I'm really happy if something's nationalist, but at the expense of putting down another country and creating slogans against another country. That is distasteful. In this day and age, it is highly distasteful. It wasn't required, it wasn't needed, but it was put in the movie, and that kind of was a very big turnoff for me, because we've all grown up. Let's face it, every country has its own agenda, every country needs to survive, and they're doing whatever they have to. And India is doing whatever they have to, but at the same time, nobody becomes a bigger patriot by putting another country down. And I thought that was very petty, and the way it was kind of put together was very, 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 very cheap to that extent.
Sure.
Malhotra is of course hot. He's charismatic, and the love track was rushed, yet it was so unpalpable. I mean, we just couldn't connect with it. Also, there's no chemistry between him and Rashmika Mandanna to the furthest. I mean, it wasn't all that great. But also, there's only so far that his good looks could have carried the movie. The movie was really carried by the actors like Kumud Mishra and Sharif Hashmi, and of course Rajat Kapoor, who are really good at what they do, and their characters were actually pretty well etched and consistent. The other thing that really hit me was, because we watch a lot of Pakistani shows and Pakistani movies as well, we realized that the affectation of 1974's Rawalpindi wasn't well done. There were so many loopholes in accent, in clothes, and everything. There was a big. It was as if somebody had just walked out the door without thinking of these things. The language, Pakistan speaks Urdu in a certain accent, and there are words in Urdu that need to be used. Instead, words in Hindi were being used, and that's deficit filmmaking. That's completely misplaced, and those are things that really affect the formal product and the feeling that it leaves you with. So yeah, the movie does end with jingoism and sacrifice. However, it does not give us the feels that we should be feeling for a hero.